Welcome back. I'm here today with my earrings, continuing the process of forming these. I scratched in a pattern with them this last time, and now what I would like to do is anneal them because they're pretty work hardened. The way you tell is bending, and it's not bending with my hands. So I know that I need to anneal these to make them soft so that they're not on this flat plane, that they have some dimension to them. And so I'm going to go over annealing again. When you're in the studio at your bench, you should have what's called a marinite board. These hold up to 2,000 degrees. You'll put that down on your bench. Along with that, you're going to need a pair of tweezers to pick up the hot metal. You're going to need a striker to be able to light the torch. And with these today, I'm going to flux them so that I don't get a lot of fire scale on them. You can actually see this one was not fluxed, and this one was fluxed. So this has got more of a fine silver finish on it, and I'll be showing you guys how to put a fine silver finish on these when we're done. But can you see the color difference on them? So I'm going to set these down on the fireboard. Remember, when you set them down on the fireboard, that they have a tendency to take a longer time to heat up. So what I'm going to do is grab this, and I'm going to prop them up, and I'm also going to keep them far apart. If they're real close to each other, I could overheat one. And then I'm also going to pay attention to not melting these ends that are here. So we have our torches at our bench, and when the gas and air is off, it means that the valve is perpendicular to the line. And it doesn't matter which one of these you turn on first, but I'm going to take the gas and I'm going to make it parallel with the line. I know this is the gas line because it says gas, but also the red is really a good informative way. This is the oxygen, and I put that on parallel. So what has happened is the gas and air has now come to the Hope torch, and the Hope torch has the gas valve and the air valve. And what I want to do now is I want to light the torch. Remember that you want to use a striker, and the strikers need to be able to have a spark on them. So I can't just run it across. I put my thumb over the top and I push down really hard. The other thing you have to remember is the gas is lighter than air. So the gas is going to come up and it's going to go up. So if I'm out here striking, nothing's going to happen. I want my striker in just above and close to the torch tip. So I'm going to take my gas and I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to strike, and if it doesn't open, I turn it a little bit more. And now that was too much. And what's frustrating a little bit here in the studio is each one of these torches is different. So I just kept tying. If this is really blowing a lot, then when I add the air, it's going to blow it out. So I'm going to back this down a little bit so that I've got 4 or 5 inches and that I don't have a gap. Can you see the gap that's happening? Uh-oh. Why did it just all go away? See the gap that's there? That's going to be problematic, so I need to back off until I see the flame running evenly out of the torch tip. Okay, and now I'm going to slowly add the air, and it's counterclockwise. Too much. See the little yellow that's happening here? That's a dirty flame. You want a nice neutral flame. So I'm going to add some more air. And now I'm getting a pretty good cone. This is pretty neutral. There's not much yellow there. This is an oxidizing flame, and this can be problematic because it'll blow your flux off, and it'll blow oxygen at your piece, which will give more fire scale. So I'm going to back off the oxygen. Come on. There we go. And I'm looking for a little bit quieter flame here. The hottest point is right here at the end. You go in past it, you've lost all your heat. Sometimes I'll work out here just to start warming up the piece. okay? So I have handled these a lot. So I know that there's a little bit of oil from my hands on it. So I'm gonna heat this up first, and then I'm gonna put the flux on it. And this is when you're gonna learn how much to heat it before it sticks to your paintbrush. But this will give me a better coating on the piece. And then I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing on the back side. Last time I showed you guys how to anneal with flux and without flux, but flux is always really good to use with silver so that you don't get the dreaded fire scale. But by preheating a little bit, what it does is it burns off any of the grease from my hands, and then I'll get a better coating that's on here. I'm gonna not put any flux on this one so that you can see how with annealing. And so I'm gonna come in, try to get used to using your non-dominant hand. And I'm gonna start moving. You can see that my blue cone isn't in past it, but I'm gonna start heating. And you can see the flux flattening out and spreading. And then you can see just a little bit of red, but at this point now I'm gonna say that I have an ice skating rink here and that's annealed. And I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna drop it into the water so that I don't have it crack where I'm holding it. So this one I'm gonna heat just with the flame, and what you're gonna see is kind of a copper color coming up. And I remember reading in a lapidary magazine saying, this is how you make silver look like gold. That's the copper that's come to the surface now, okay? So that's at about 600 degrees. You could use this as a design element if you wanted, but I know it's not hot enough yet for having this metal annealed. So I'm gonna come back in, and I like to use my torch like a paintbrush that I'm painting something. And now you can see the darker colors coming up. And it's pretty much turning black at this point, and that's the annealing temperature. And one of the things that I like is there are a lot of artists that actually use the oxides as part of the design element that's on here. Okay. So I'm gonna pick this up, and I'm gonna drop it into water. And what's happened is that 7.5% of copper has come to the surface. And then it gives like a funny little purple surface that I'll show you after we take this out of the pickle. And I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna put a fine silver finish on these pieces so that I will avoid having fire scale. So I'm gonna turn this off. The first thing I need to do is oxygen off first and then gas. And the reason why you do that is that if I turn the gas off first, the oxygen can just keep blowing, and you might forget to turn this valve off, and then we're gonna feel really good in here because we got lots of oxygen, but we're gonna run out of oxygen and have to end the day. So that's the torch. Hang it up like that so that it's nice and steady there. And now I'm gonna pull these two out of the pickle, and I want you to see kind of the difference of the heating process. So you can see that this is much, much whiter. This has the black oxides on here. For me, I really like it when an artist will get the copper to come to the surface of the silver and then go back in and sand off some of the black, and you get a really nice black and white contrast that's on there. These, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that, but boy, those little scratch marks from my scribe are really showing up here, which might be the way I wanna go when I'm finishing on this. But from here, they need to go into the pickle. And remember with the pickle, this is the one here in the studio. We've got the ones in the back. You'll have your own copper tongs, and I can just drop these into the pickle and then close it and then give it about 5 minutes. Then I'm gonna use the copper tongs to pull them out of the pickle so that I don't copper plate these pieces any more than I already have that are on here. In my studio, I use my pickle cold, because when you heat up the pickle, there are some vapors. Those vapors can sometimes rust steel in the studio. And so when you do heat the pickle up, make sure that you use it on a low temperature and that you keep the lid on the top. And ideally is to have a vent for it in your own studio. So the pickle is sodium bisulfate. It comes as granules. It's also known as Sparex. That's kind of like the name brand Kleenex, Sparex. It gives instructions on it. I have a tendency to use a lot less than what's recommended by the manufacturer. A little bit weaker pickle works for me. I'm not usually as in a hurry because I've got more than one piece I'm working on at a time. It does actually erode into your clothing, so that's why I like to wear an apron so that I'm not ruining the clothes that I'm wearing that day if you get any of it on you. And you definitely don't want your hands in the pickle. Before we had Sparex, people used to use sulfuric acid. And I had a student who was a Navajo Indian that took classes. I was really honored to have him in my class. But he didn't have any fingernails on a couple of his fingers. And what he told me is that happened from using a mild solution of sulfuric acid, and he used to just reach into the pickle and pull things out. We don't want to do that. His fingers were fine, they just kind of looked different. But sulfuric was what was used until pickle came along. Other people will talk about using vinegar and water, and vinegar and salt, and vinegar and salt will do the same thing. It's probably more expensive than Sparex, but you don't have to go to a supplier to get it. It can't be dumped down the drain either, because what it does is it's pulling the coppers and the metals off the surface to clean them, and then that's in solution, and if that goes down the drain, it goes out to the sound, and our salmon are gonna be affected by that. So we need to make sure that we dispose of our pickle properly. I'll talk about that at another time. And then what we're starting to do now that I'm really happy about is when you quench, you get oxides, that's metal, in the mixing bowl. And so what we're doing now is we're taking our mixing bowls at the end of class and we're pouring them into a coffee filter, and we're trapping all of the oxides in that coffee filter, which gets disposed, and then the water goes down the drain. And so that's a much more environmentally friendly way of approaching working with the pickle and annealing metal in the jewelry studio. So these are going to pickle for a while. I'm going to pull them out, clean them up, dry them off, and then next time I will show you how I'm going to shape them. I'm probably going to use a couple of hammers on a piece of rubber to get the shape I'm looking for. All right, thank you.